December 16, 1993.
Tonight, a startling new report about the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr.
Did James Earl Ray kill Martin Luther King Jr.?
No.
Do you know who killed Martin Luther King Jr.?
Yes, sir.
Sam Donaldson has the first interview with a Memphis businessman who says he was part of a conspiracy.
Mr. Jowers, did you find someone to do the killing?
25 years later, Primetime investigates these extraordinary allegations. Charges that, if true, could rewrite history.
Do you have investigators now who are looking for the alleged shooter? A Primetime investigation. It's been hailed as a surgical revolution. Using a tube with a camera and a light, you can undergo complicated surgery and be in and out of the hospital in a day. Tonight, we reveal the dark side of that revolution. Deadly complications that might have been avoided. Hospitals that are lax with credentials. And surgeons who learn operating techniques from sales reps. Tonight, Dr. Timothy Johnson on what you haven't heard about laparoscopic surgery.
She was a cold-blooded terrorist on a deadly mission that killed 115 people.
Investigators now believe that a bomb, possibly planted by 2 passengers, may have caused Sunday's crash of a Korean airliner.
I was honored and overwhelmed to be given that kind of assignment.
Tonight, the bizarre story of Miss Kim, the former spy who was sentenced to death 4 years ago and now is treated like a VIP in the country that was once her sworn enemy.
Finally, you wake up with a jolt. Your heart's pounding. You're dripping with sweat. Nightmare, the horror flicks that play in our minds. We'll explain what they really mean.
From ABC News, with anchors Diane Sawyer, Sam Donaldson, Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace, Judd Rhodes, Sylvia Chase, John Quinones, Renee Poussaint, and Dr. Timothy Johnson, this is Prime Time.
2 Supreme Court justices assassinated. A lone law student has pieced together who did the killings and why. Julia Roberts, Denzel Washington. The Pelican Brief, rated PG-13. Starts Friday, December 17th at a theater near you.
There's a little fun in every bottle of Tots Blanc de Noir. Open up your senses to an incredible new taste in champagne. Tots Blanc de Noir. Alive. Unexpected. Different. Join in. There's a little fun in every bottle. Taste it in Tots Blanc de Noir.
Skill FlexiCharge cordless tools.
We interrupt this ad for a special offer. Now, when you buy a FlexiCharge cordless screwdriver, you also get a FlexiCharge flashlight.
The FlexiCharge interchangeable power system. From Skill.
I'm Robert Urich. Join me and Mickey along with Natalie Cole, Andy Williams, Kathy Lee Gifford, Tricia Yearwood, Peebo Bryson, and other great musical stars with a musical Christmas at Walt Disney World right here on ABC.
A Christmas Carol Spectacular, Saturday.
Clark learns he's from another planet, Krypton. Can he keep his secret under wraps?
Are you Superman? Yes.
Or will Lois take the fall?
Pick me! I want to kiss Clark goodbye.
Lois and Clark, Sunday.
Primetime. Now from Washington, Sam Donaldson.
Good evening. We begin tonight with a startling story which says there was a conspiracy to kill Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and tells us the killer was not James Earl Ray after all. You will hear from 2 men who claim to have direct knowledge of the facts, including one who says he was the man asked to arrange Dr. King's murder. Now, understandably, any such new claim at this late date in such famous cases as Dr. King's or the murder of President Kennedy must be greeted with a good deal of skepticism. Some people have already branded this story a hoax. But what makes it different from most assassination conspiracy tales is that someone has actually come forward who claims to have been personally involved and who is now asking for immunity from prosecution so that he might tell his story without fear of going to jail. The District Attorney General in Memphis is also very skeptical, but he takes the matter seriously enough to promise he will investigate. He tells Primetime he would be derelict in his duty if he didn't. Here now is the story the Memphis prosecutor is going to hear about what happened on April 4th, 1968.
We as a people will get to the promised land.
Mr. Jowers, did James Earl Ray kill Dr. Martin Luther King?
No, he did not.
Do you know who killed Dr. King?
I know who was paid to do it.
Lloyd Jowers, a 67-year-old Memphis businessman who wants his face partially shadowed because he says he fears for his safety, insists he has a shocking story to tell. Was there a conspiracy involving more than one person?
It was a conspiracy, yes, sir. Sure was.
Were you involved in this conspiracy to kill Martin Luther King, Jr.?
I was involved in it indirectly.
I have a dream that one day...
He was the most recognized civil rights leader of modern times. More than that, a general who preached nonviolence in the war against racial segregation that flared so violently across the South. To his enemies, an agitator of the worst kind. To his followers and admirers, a visionary of the brightest promise. And then in Memphis, on April 4th, 1968, he was killed by an assassin's bullet at the age of 39. Cities erupted in anguish with riots, arson, and looting. Millions mourned his passing and asked why had it happened? Who could have done such an awful thing? A 40-year-old drifter named James Earl Ray was apprehended, confessed in open court to the murder, and was sentenced to 99 years in jail. But there have always been nagging questions about the case. And now Jowers, a longtime associate of his named Willie Akins, and their attorney Louis Garrison have sat down with Primetime to tell a story that challenges the accepted belief of 25 years. Their attorney has been asking the local authorities for legal immunity for 5 people so they can tell their story without prosecution. And why?
So that they may tell what actually occurred on the night of assassination. These individuals either were there or had close proximity to the assassination, and they are willing, if they're granted immunity, to come forth and give their version of what actually happened.
Their story begins here at Jim's Grill, which was, in 1968, a bar and grill located on South Main, owned and operated by Lloyd Jowers, who was there when the assassination occurred. Above it was a rooming house. Behind it, the vacant lot across the street from the Lorraine Motel where Dr. King was killed. The official version of what happened here at the Lorraine Motel that day, put forward by Memphis police and the FBI, was that as Dr. King stood here on the balcony outside his room and leaned over to talk to someone below, a shot was fired from a rooming house across the street and just over 200 feet away, a shot fired by James Earl Ray. But now Lloyd Jowers wants to come forward and say it didn't happen that way. The new story is that the shot was fired from somewhere down below, perhaps as close as that row of bushes just above the wall, and not fired by James Earl Ray, but instead by a new shooter that Jowers had been asked to hire. According to Jowers, the man who asked him to help in the killing of Dr. King was a now-deceased Memphis produce dealer named Frank Liberto.
Liberto done me several large favors, so I owed him a favor. Or at least I thought I did.
Did there come a time when he came and asked you to repay that favor?
Yes, sir.
And was it a large favor he wanted in return?
Yes, sir.
What did Frank Liberto ask you to do?
He asked me to handle some money transaction, hire someone to assassinate Dr. Martin Luther King.
To kill Dr. King?
Yes, sir. He asked me if I knew someone. I told him I thought I knew someone who would probably do it.
And he gave you some money?
Yes, sir.
Large amount of money?
Large amount of money, yes, sir. Delivered it to the cafe.
Primetime has been told there was approximately $100,000 delivered to Jowers in a produce box. But that's not all he received. Jowers says another man came to see him, a man whose name sounded something like Raul.
Well, he looked like he was part Mexican, possibly part Indian because he didn't have a heavy beard, talked with an accent.
Did he bring a rifle with him?
Yes, sir. He brought a rifle in a box.
What did he ask you to do with this rifle?
He asked me to hold the rifle until he made arrangements, or we made arrangements one the other of us for the killing.
So now Jowers had the money, had the rifle, had been asked to hire a shooter, but he says Frank Liberto also provided a cover. Did he talk about the police?
Liberto? Yes, sir.
What did he say?
He said they wouldn't be there. Said they wouldn't be there that night.
Did he say there would be a decoy there?
Yes, sir. Said it would be set up, but it looked like someone else done the killing.
Enter James Earl Ray. Was he part of the conspiracy?
He was part of it, but I don't believe he knew he was part of it.
Ray had rented a room under the name of John Willard in the rooming house over Jim's Grill. Another rooming house tenant told police he saw Ray running down the hall just after the shot was fired. 7 minutes after the shooting, police found a .30-06 rifle dropped in a doorway just down the street. Ray had purchased the rifle using an alias 4 days earlier in Birmingham, Alabama. His fingerprints were on the rifle, although the FBI was unable to match it with the bullet taken from Dr. King's body because not enough markings remained on the fragmented bullet. After 2 months on the run using a fake passport, during which he traveled through 3 countries, spending a great deal of money, Ray was captured at the London airport. On March 10, 1969, Ray pleaded guilty to killing Dr. King. 3 days later, he tried to take it back, later claiming he wasn't in the rooming house at the time, that a man named Raoul had asked him to buy a rifle as part of a prospective deal to sell guns, and that he'd been brainwashed by police and pressured by his own attorney to plead guilty. Over the years, many people have doubted that Ray really did it, including Hosea Williams, one of Dr. King's colleagues, who was standing in the courtyard of the motel when the shot was fired.
I think it came from the ground level. I really think it came from the ground level. James Earl Ray was just a patsy. He was set up. Who in the world go shoot a gun and kill Dr. King and run out the building and leave the gun on the sidewalk? That was not the gun.
But if Ray wasn't the shooter, who was? Well, Mr. Jowers, did you find someone to do the killing?
Yes.
Well, he cannot answer that. I'm not going to permit him to answer that question. He's gone as far as we can.
That's where Lloyd Jowers' public telling of the story comes to a halt until he says he's given immunity. But Willie Akins can go farther. Akins wasn't around when King was assassinated, but he says that after Jowers closed Jim's Grill, the 2 men became close friends. And in 1974, his friend, whom he won't confirm was Jowers, asked him to do a job. What was the job he asked you to do?
He had a fellow that was wanted to be out of the way. He needed to be out of the way.
What do you mean by out of the way?
He was afraid, my friend was afraid that he would talk too much. And he wanted to get rid of the man and asked me would I do the job.
Did your friend tell you who this man was and why he needed to be gotten out of the way?
Well, he told me who he was. And at the time, I thought he was getting rid of the man by the woman, you know. But later on in the year, he told me what it was all about.
What did he say?
He said that was the man who killed King.
Akins said he found the man here in Memphis, whom he described as a slow-acting, kind of retarded black man. But before he could get the chance to pop him, as he put it, the man disappeared. But you were prepared to do the job if the opportunity had presented itself.
Yes, sir.
Do you know his name?
He knows, but we can't disclose that at this time.
Can you tell us whether this man is still alive?
We have this man's name, Social Security number, place of birth, his height, date of birth, where he was born, his parents' name. We run into some dead-end streets on this, but currently we have a person that we think is at least this person is using his Social Security number, and we're working on it currently to locate him.
And this is the man that, according to this story, killed Dr. King.
That's correct.
If this man being searched for was the real shooter, what happened to the real gun he used? That brings us to Betty Spates, who worked in Jim's Grill. Though not identified by name in Attorney Garrison's document requesting immunity, she is clearly the prospective witness who allegedly will testify she saw Jowers near the back door with a rifle moments after the killing, and in her presence, he disassembled it and hid it under a counter. According to sources, another prospective witness seeking immunity is James McGraw, who is supposedly prepared to say the day after the shooting, Jowers showed him the weapon and told him this is the rifle that killed Martin Luther King. Presumably, these witnesses would thus corroborate portions of the story that Lloyd Jowers would tell, a story of a hideous crime that reverberated worldwide. Why would a person participate in the conspiracy to kill Dr. King?
A portion of it, naturally, was for money. Any involvement I might have had in it was doing a friend a favor.
Would it have been because you hated Dr. King?
No, I didn't hate Dr. King.
Or hated black people?
No, sir. It was for a friend, doing a friend a favor that I owed him, a large favor.
Well, is doing a friend a favor called murder the kind of favor that you would do?
Depending on how good a friend it is and what you owe the friend.
It turns out the House subcommittee that in 1979 looked into the King assassination had run across the name of Jowers' friend, produce dealer Frank Liberto. Subcommittee Chairman Walter Fauntleroy recalls a witness who testified
that he'd heard Frank Liberto around 6 o'clock on the evening Dr. King was killed, shouting to someone over the phone, "Kill the SOB. My brother in New Orleans is going to take care of you with $5,000.
Who was my brother in New Orleans?
The chief aide to Carlos Marcello, who was the mafia,
mob chieftain.
Without question.
Does all this sound improbable? From New Orleans to Memphis to Jim's Grill to Lloyd Jowers and an unknown shooter with James Earl Ray nothing more than a patsy? To the Selby County District Attorney General John Perotti, the man to whom Garrison has addressed his immunity request, the story sounds not just improbable, but ridiculous.
We have met on it, and we have all collectively decided or may come to the conclusion that there's no validity to it.
Have you interviewed these prospective witnesses?
No, I really haven't had a chance to because I've been interviewed by so many media people.
Well, on what basis do you conclude that it isn't true if you haven't interviewed the witnesses?
Well, from the body of the file and from the body of the proof that we have. Now, 25 years later, when memory's dim, when you can't find anybody, all of a sudden here comes somebody that says, "Oh, yeah, I just want to get this off my mind." What am I supposed to do? There's a guy who says that he is guilty of a capital crime, and I'm supposed to give him immunity? I mean, that's ludicrous.
Why would Lloyd Jowers and others come forward with this kind of story?
Maybe he wanted to get you to come down from New York and put him on television. Maybe he wanted his Andy Warhol 15 minutes in the sun. I don't know why people do things.
So you're telling me that you do not think you're going to grant him immunity?
I know I'm not. I'm not going to request it.
Now, this story we've heard today is very sensational. And if true, and if it is borne out, clearly James Earl Ray will be freed from prison.
We have no interest in James Earl Ray. I've never met James Earl Ray. He has an attorney that I met one time about a year ago. Told him my name. He told me his name. That's the extent of it. I've never had any communication with him, period. No telephone calls, no anything.
And has anyone in his behalf come to you and asked you
Never.
to participate in telling this story?
Never.
District Attorney General Perotti, apparently responding to the publicity, says he will now investigate. And the consequences might not be pleasant for Jowers if other witnesses testify as advertised. Are you now then going to investigate his story?
Well, sure. I think we'd be derelict if we didn't look into it. If, as a matter of fact, Mr. Jowers is correct, my office and the police department need to work on it and see if we can, as a matter of fact, if Mr. Jowers did this, develop a criminal prosecution.
I just felt like the people should know what really happened. And if we get immunity, they will know. Believe me, they will. If we don't, they may never know.
Why would people come forward now to tell such a story as you've just heard? You should know that Lloyd Jowers was questioned by police at the time of the assassination and said none of what he said tonight. And Willie Akins is a man with a criminal record that includes a conviction for manslaughter. Both told us they were willing to take lie detector tests. But if the witnesses we've told you about are brought before a grand jury and lie, they are subject to perjury charges. So this tale may not be cost-free if they persist in telling it and it isn't true. We will all be watching the District Attorney General's investigation with great interest.
Coming next, it was supposed to be a medical revolution. complicated surgery made quick, easy, and a lot less painful.
The surgeon came in and told us that she had injured my bile duct and that she didn't know anyone that could correct it.
Now it turns out there's a darker side to laparoscopic surgery that could put your health at risk. When Prime Time continues.
Somewhere between sundown and sunrise comes Stetson Sierra. So distinctive, it's the new power of attraction.
What's that fragrance you're wearing?
Exclamation! Make a statement without saying a word.
You've never had cereal like this before. It has the enticing aroma and the spice of ground cinnamon, the delicious, savory crunch of rolled oats baked to perfection, the sweetness of brown sugar, a touch of vanilla, and a sprinkling of nutmeg. There's never been cereal like this before. The new Kellogg's Cracklin' Oat brand, now baked with an even more irresistible recipe. Kellogg's Cracklin' Oat brand. It's the brand you'll eat for taste alone.
From Academy Award winner Oliver Stone comes the third film in an extraordinary trilogy, Heaven and Earth. A woman who risked her life for freedom. A man who lost his soul to war. Two people who found their peace in each other. Tommy Lee Jones, Joan Chen, Hang Noor, and introducing Hepti Lee. Heaven and Earth, rated R. Starts December 25th, select cities.
You mean if I call my son in college the most, Sprint pays half?
Now there's a new reason to switch to the most.
What if I told you he goes to college in Japan?
No problem. Call anyone, anywhere, anytime, and Sprint will split the bill on the person you call most.
I don't suppose there's anything you could do about his tuition bill.
Sorry, we have to draw the line somewhere.
Call now and save 50% with Sprint's calling plan, the most.
You go in for back surgery. It's supposed to make you feel better. And then they put these screws into you and you feel worse.
Well, nothing now. I hurt too much.
Could this happen to you? 2020 investigates Friday.
Any word on the donor? Doctor says he'll be able to do the transplant in time.
The cop's daughter needs the gift of life.
Get the heart and bring it here fast.
Somebody must have taken it.
Let's go!
Can Tony deliver a Christmas miracle?
You better pray this little girl doesn't die.
Saturday, it's the commission.
Prime Time continues. Now from Los Angeles, Diane Sawyer.
Not long ago, everyone in the medical community and the media seemed in a rapture about a new surgical technique called laparoscopic surgery. Amazing, revolutionary, they said. It transformed gallbladder surgery overnight, making it quick, easy, much less painful. In fact, an estimated 500,000 people will have that surgery done with a laparoscope this year. But tonight, ABC's Dr. Timothy Johnson is going to tell you something you probably haven't heard about this technique. The risks and the problems that haven't made the headlines until now.
Give her some more. Are you ready?
It is a true revolution. Patients like Vicky DeMerco having major gallbladder surgery done so simply.
And good luck on your surgery.
The old gallbladder operation required a 6-inch cut, a week in the hospital, and at least a month of recovery. But for Vicky's surgery, doctors at Barnes Hospital in St. Louis made 4 small puncture holes, stuck a tube with a camera and light called a laparoscope in one of them, and several surgical instruments in the others. Then, by working those instruments while watching a TV screen, they freed up and removed Vicky's gallbladder through one of the small holes. The next morning, 24 hours after she arrived, Vicky went home, one of the hundreds of thousands of people who have benefited from the laparoscopic revolution of gallbladder surgery. But there is a darker side to this revolution. Surgeons who were inadequately trained, instrument companies who hyped it to the public, and an estimated hundreds who died and thousands who were injured by complications that many believe might have been avoided. Case in point, 82-year-old Catherine Lochner, Her son and daughter say she loved music and worked as an organist at her church. But on July 6, 1991, she entered St. Elizabeth Hospital in Utica, New York for laparoscopic gallbladder surgery.
I was with her the night before the surgery, and the way it was presented was that this was a surgery that offered few complications, and we're actually very happy about it.
2 weeks later, Catherine Lochner was dead.
I know that complications and errors can happen. You know, no one expects perfection, really. But this should not have happened.
The laparoscopic revolution actually began with this videotape, which was shown at a national gathering of surgeons in October of 1989. It was shown by 2 surgeons in private practice from Nashville who demonstrated they could remove the gallbladder with the laparoscope. It turned the profession upside down, and suddenly surgeons were scrambling to learn this new technique. And the companies that make laparoscopic instruments were ready to help the doctors learn. One company quickly dominated. U.S. Surgical Corporation, one of the fastest-growing medical companies in the United States, invested millions of dollars in 2-day crash courses for physicians to learn laparoscopic surgery. They trained a remarkable 15,000 physicians in 1 year.
You can see the internal ring from the inside, and we'll show that when we're looking at hernia repairs here in a few minutes.
We attended one of the company-funded courses last year and observed repeated references to U.S. surgical products and salespeople pitching U.S. surgical instruments.
Everybody familiar with the endo-GIA? Have you used it?
We then observed, at practice sessions on pigs, those same salespeople becoming instructors for the doctors, doing almost all of the teaching, and not just how to work the instruments.
Open up this area right here first, and then come across from your indirect to direct space.
Right, now what you want to do is you want to make a window for the endo-GIA. So dissect out just one of these windows, take the endo-GIA up across here.
The idea of reps of a company teaching surgeons how to do a course strikes me wrong.
Dr. Nathaniel Soper, a general surgeon from Washington University in St. Louis, has been part of the laparoscopic revolution from the beginning.
I mean, they're pointing out anatomy literally and talking about how you actually do the operation. Yeah. That should be the job of the surgeons who are there to do the training.
Now, to take this out,
I don't think it's ethical.
Dr. Michael Bagish is editor of a leading journal on laparoscopic surgery.
I think if you look at this, you are having lay people teaching professionals to do highly complex surgery. And then one wonders, why do complications occur?
One of the surgeons in charge of this course for U.S. Surgical was Dr. Eddie Joe Reddick, one of the pioneers of laparoscopic gallbladder surgery. Besides teaching for U.S. Surgical, Dr. Reddick taught his own courses and made a personal fortune of at least $4 million by charging surgeons just to watch him do the new surgery. He often had 15 to 20 surgeons watching at once.
This is called an endo gauge, and this is
Dr. Reddick maintains that the salespeople only taught how to use the instruments. He also says his training courses were non-commercial. We then showed him our tape.
First of all, you see the torquing of the Ethicon endo clip, and you see no torquing on the auto suture.
No, that is commercial, and I think you've got a real good point there.
Dr. Reddick, though, still defended the 2-day crash courses, but he says he encouraged surgeons to practice with an experienced laparoscopic surgeon before operating on their own.
I think it's real unfortunate that maybe everyone wasn't trained in all the safety techniques that they needed to be trained in before, but I didn't know what those were. So I couldn't teach them if I didn't know what they were. I didn't know how people were going to screw this thing up until some people screwed it up.
But many patients never heard about the potential problems. They only heard about the benefits.
It seemed like a wonderful thing.
Connie Angelini and her brother Charles Lochner remember the positive emphasis all too well. And they are upset not just over their mother's death from complications of laparoscopic gallbladder surgery, but about how little they say the doctor and the hospital told them about the risks.
Do you remember specifically what complications they did talk about? They didn't talk about any complications for this surgery.
Can you tell me how come you didn't discuss the risks with Mrs. Lochner?
We did.
The surgeon, Dr. John Detralia, would not talk about the case, which was settled out of court. Dr. Detralia did give Mrs. Lochner this brochure, which was offered by the hospital's public relations department. It says nothing about complications, but U.S. Surgical, who supplied the handout, had a different purpose in mind.
It's an illusion created by the company. It's a public demand that has been artificially created. It is a scheme to use the mass media. It's in fact advertising.
U.S. Surgical had decided to use hospitals and doctors to sell its operation to the media. This December 1990 memo from U.S. Surgical to its sales force, obtained by Primetime, encouraged the salespeople to offer media kits to their surgeons and hospitals. It said, quote, "Now you can benefit from this public relations effort in your own territory." We showed this U.S. Surgical Company memo to Connie and Charles.
So, how does that strike you?
That's exactly what happened in our case. I mean, it was, I guess, a marketing process, and we believed it all. We didn't ask any questions.
So with companies promoting the operation and physician teachers unable to guarantee adequate training, there was only one safety net left, the hospital. When doctors came back from crash courses, it was up to their hospital to decide when they were ready to operate. Some hospitals established tough standards. For example, Good Samaritan Hospital in suburban Chicago mandated careful evaluation of a surgeon's competence plus statistics on complications, and they required that all operations be done by 2 surgeons.
Observing that having a second pair of hands is mandatory, but the question is how well trained are those hands and the experience behind the hand.
Right. It's instantaneous advice, too.
But what about standards at other institutions? Primetime contacted 21 community hospitals across the nation who do laparoscopic surgery. From the information they provided, 8 of the 21 did not appear to meet national guidelines for laparoscopic credentialing. And when asked about complication rates and surgical problems, 13 of the 21 could not or would not comment. So what is the risk when hospitals are lax in their credentialing? Take the case of Yanni Milliner, who in 1990 was in need of gallbladder surgery. Dr. Beth Sutton, her surgeon, was allowed to perform laparoscopic surgery after writing Wichita General Hospital this letter, simply stating her educational experience. This satisfied the hospital, and Mrs. Milliner never thought to ask about her doctor's training. But the facts are that Dr. Sutton attended just 2 weekend courses, and Yanni was only her 4th laparoscopic gallbladder patient. As these x-rays show, staples used in place of stitches were put in the wrong place.
Well, but the time we found out something was wrong, the surgeon came in and told us that she had injured my bile duct and that she didn't know anyone that could correct it.
Dr. Sutton, who is being sued by Yanni Milliner, would not discuss the case, but in court documents she has denied all allegations. The problem is that if a hospital does not exert control, there are virtually no other controls over the introduction of new surgery in this country. The FDA does not regulate surgery, and we could find only one state that even kept track of complications from this new operation. That leaves very little protection for the patient.
After consulting with her doctor, Anne learned she was a candidate for a new kind of hysterectomy.
Meanwhile, the marketing of other kinds of laparoscopic surgery has continued as the technique has expanded to hernias, appendix removals, and gynecological procedures such as hysterectomies. But critics say it may be dangerous to use the laparoscope too quickly in other operations.
They really haven't been tested as far as what their complication rates are, what the benefits of that operation are, whether it has benefits over the conventional surgery that's been done for many, many years. And the patients get perhaps one side of the story.
What I want people to hear is the story of how economic pressures, I think mainly, contaminated a process, a decision-making process, and because of that, safety was compromised. And we all have an interest in seeing that that doesn't happen.
We want to point out that done properly, laparoscopic surgery is generally safe. But if you're thinking of having gallbladder laparoscopic surgery, you should ask your surgeon about his or her training and experience. And if you're considering laparoscopic surgery for something else, you probably ought to get a second opinion.
Still ahead, you're terrified, panicked, and then you wake up. We'll tell you the real meaning of nightmares. Also, a former spy who confessed to blowing up a plane, killing 115 people.
I felt great pride in myself for not being a revolutionary, standing in the front line.
Now, she's a celebrity in the country where she was sentenced to die. Her strange tale when Primetime continues after this from our ABC stations.
New Year's Day on ABC Sports begins with the 105th Tournament of Roses Parade. Then our college football triple header kicks off when number 6 Tennessee tackles Penn State in the Comp USA Florida Citrus Bowl, followed by the Rose Bowl as Big Ten champion Wisconsin makes its first appearance in 31 years. They'll face Pac-10 champ UCLA. And that night, undefeated West Virginia stakes its claim to the national title when they take on SEC champ Florida in the USF&G Insurance Sugar Bowl. It's all New Year's Day on ABC.
We want to bring you the latest on some primetime reports, beginning with our story last week about the massacre on the Long Island Railroad. We gave you the minute-by-minute account of the tragedy as a gunman identified by police as Colin Ferguson opened fire on the Hicksville 533, killing 5 people. Since then, a 6th victim, 27-year-old Amy Federici, has died.
Our daughter died of a bullet to the neck, one of the many victims of one gun.
Funeral services were held for Dennis McCarthy, who was sitting next to his son, Kevin. Kevin remains in critical but stable condition. And one of the injured victims has filed notice that he will sue the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, which oversees the Long Island Railroad, for $5 million. Also, as part of our Washington Waste series, we told you that right up to the last minute, the outgoing Bush administration handed out tens of thousands of dollars in bonuses to federal employees at the taxpayers' expense. Recently, the Senate passed a bill that would ban such bonuses for political appointees who are about to leave office. The bill is expected to be approved by the House and signed by President Clinton. Primetime continues in a moment.
Pull down the shades, turn down the lights. Don't make me, baby, baby, not tonight. I'm ready for love. I've been so lonely, hearts so torn apart. Pick up the pieces of my broken heart. I'm ready for love.
I will build a motor car for the great multitude, constructed of the best materials by the best men and women to be hired. Any person making a good salary will be able to own one and enjoy, with his family, the blessings of hours of pleasure in God's great open spaces.
Gravity. It's more than a fragrance. It's a force of nature. Gravity. For men. You couldn't resist it, even if you tried.
It took a lot more than tough cowboys to win the West. Lady Stetson, the spirit of the West, the power of a woman. Lady Stetson, it's how the West was won.
Of all the credit cards out there, only one has Smart Rate, now as low as 14.9%, and no annual fee. Discover Card. It's a better deal. It pays to discover. This holiday season, while you're shopping, we'll be dropping $5 million in the Discover Card Big Payback. Now, every time you use your card, you're automatically entered in our $5 million sweepstakes. It pays to discover the card with the big payback.
What if your in-laws took your kids? It happened to Tammy Brown. They say she lived immorally. She said it was something else.
And they said, as long as I'm dating a black guy, we're not bringing the kids back.
Morality or racism? You decide. Day 1, Monday.
Sunday, John Ritter and Henry Winkler in a world television premiere.
I'll kill you before I let you go. I'll handle it legally.
Let me handle it. Be faster and cheaper.
If a madman calls, would you take The Only Way Out? Sunday.
Now for an incredible tale of brainwashing, espionage, and murder, and one woman's strange path to celebrity. She was the deadly instrument of Kim Il-sung and his dark dynasty in North Korea. Newsweek called that dynasty the Addams family of world politics. So not long ago, we sat down with her in Seoul, South Korea. Sylvia Chase has the bizarre story of the woman who brought down Korean Air Flight 858.
I had been brainwashed from childhood to believe that it was my duty to die for the leader, Kim Il-sung. And that's all I knew, since the leader is a god.
Her name is Kim Hyun-hee, and she was, by her own admission, a cold-blooded terrorist. The daughter of a North Korean diplomat, she was trained in North Korea, a closed communist dictatorship ruled for 45 years by Kim Il-sung, known as the Great Leader. Like all North Koreans, Kim Hyun-hee was taught loyalty bordering on worship of the Great Leader. She learned to despise the South and fear American invasion. She says she was programmed to do anything to further Korean reunification, even to kill.
I felt great pride in myself for being a revolutionary, standing in the front line.
On November 29, 1987, at age 25, she got her chance.
Investigators now believe that a bomb, possibly planted by 2 passengers, may have caused Sunday's crash of a Korean airliner.
After being trained for 7 years and 8 months, I was honored and overwhelmed to be given that kind of assignment. I couldn't think of hesitating. I didn't hesitate at all.
It began when she and a senior agent she called Mr. Kim, posing as Japanese tourists, boarded KAL 858 in Baghdad, carrying a bomb.
In accordance with a plan to blow up a South Korean plane, I took an oath.
She told the story in a confession, broadcast nationally to a rapt South Korea. How she was sent on a mission to disrupt South Korea's plans for the 1988 Summer Olympics in Seoul.
20 minutes before boarding, Mr. Kim fixed the time device on the radio for 9 hours later. As he took his seat, Mr. Kim put his travel bag, a vinyl bag containing the radio with an explosive in it, a bottle of liquor and cigarettes, in a compartment above his seat. After the plane touched down, we left, leaving the vinyl bag containing the explosives in the compartment.
The 2 agents got off in Abu Dhabi, and the plane continued its journey toward Seoul. It exploded in the sky near Burma, killing all 115 people aboard.
I was indoctrinated to believe that my mission was for the good of the Korean people and the reunification of our country.
Within days, authorities apprehended Kim Hyun-hee and her fellow conspirator, as they tried to make their way back to North Korea. The two had orders to commit suicide using cyanide capsules if they were captured.
Mr. Kim said that now we were finished. So I took the cigarette pack containing the poison ampules from the purse before I handed it to him. I bit the filter on one of them. I immediately lost consciousness.
The senior agent died, but Kim survived.
When I failed in my attempt to commit suicide, I felt very, very sorry that I didn't die. I'm not afraid of death at all. A part of me expected that North Korea would do something about me as well.
She was extradited to Seoul. Police taped her mouth because she had tried to commit suicide again by biting off her tongue. Kim Hyun-hee was interrogated for 8 days by the South Koreans. First, she claimed to be Japanese, then Chinese. Finally, she admitted she was a North Korean agent. She says the confession was voluntary.
No, I wasn't tortured. On the contrary, if I had been tortured, I would have resisted confessing. But because they treated me so humanely, it was actually easier for me to confess.
In a highly publicized trial, marked by angry outbursts from the KAL victims' families, Kim Hyun-hee was convicted and sentenced to die.
I understood that because I was guilty, I deserved to die. But at the same time, when I was actually sentenced, I felt sorry for myself.
1 year after her trial, another shockwave. South Korean President Roh Tae-woo pardoned her and set her free. The government decided she was more useful alive in continuing the propaganda war against the North.
I thought I would be killed, so naturally I was very moved and overwhelmed. I wanted to run to my parents and let them know that I would live, and I wanted to cry with joy. On the other hand, I had to question whether or not I deserved to live, to face the families of the victims.
In an odd twist, Miss Kim, as she's now known, has become a kind of cult figure, referred to in the press as the Virgin Terrorist. She is a mainstay on the lecture circuit, where she depicts a bleak, totalitarian North Korea. Here, before 5,000 policemen, she explained how North Korean espionage agents are trained.
We were taught that our aim was to achieve our mission successfully, and that it was irrelevant whether we survived or died. When I appear in a large crowd, the authorities pay a lot of attention to my security. I feel tense, and I fear something may happen.
Miss Kim herself is now believed to be a target of those agents. She has also been threatened by family members of the victims of KAL Flight 858.
Many people question how such a sinner could be treated like a celebrity, and I don't feel comfortable about it. I just don't want to hear the word terrorist. I simply want to be forgotten.
But that is unlikely. She has written a book which has sold over 1 million copies in South Korea and Japan. It pays handsomely. She says she has earned $1.2 million and offered some of it to the families of the KAL victims, but they turned her down. The South Korean government provides VIP treatment, a chauffeured car. Miss Kim goes to fancy restaurants, and she receives many marriage proposals from Korean and Japanese men. We visited her here in a residential area of Seoul, where she says she lives with relatives. She claims to be a born-again Christian who spends a lot of time reading the Bible and praying and thinking about her family.
I still see them in my dreams all the time, and I can feel their agony, and I pray for them. My parents may not know where I am, whether I am still alive or not. I have a feeling that they may have been imprisoned. I'm able to go on living because of the hope I will see them again someday.
For the present, Miss Kim is scorned as a liar in North Korea and treated like a pet in South Korea, where she is in the constant shadow of bodyguards. For though she has been pardoned and freed, she will probably always be carefully watched and used by the South Korean government.
I will never be free from the sense of guilt, and I feel that it's a burden I have to carry throughout my life.
Miss Kim is expected to come to the United States next month to publicize her book.
In a moment, Judd Rose on everyone's worst nightmare. when Prime Time continues.
So, how's that space next to tonight's chicken looking? Oh, that empty, huh? Hey, I can help. New Lipton Golden Sauté Pasta. Look at this. Delicate angel hair pasta, tender broccoli, zesty herbs and spices, and a yummy sauté taste. Guess that's why they call it Golden Sauté. You'll call it a miracle. Meatloaf tomorrow? We'll talk. New Lipton Golden Sauté Pasta. The sautéed taste that's on your side. Heck, I'm gonna go have some right now. Oh, I love this.
Would we claim the new Norelco razor shaves closer than ever without hundreds of tests to back it up? Say our new Precision Groove helps the Norelco lift and cut system shave closer without proof? No. We wouldn't say it's our closest shave ever without science, sensors, tests. But of all the tests that prove it's closer, the most convincing requires a personal touch. The new Norelco razors, our closest shave ever.
Plan for plan, state to state. MCI always offers you savings over AT&T.
Geronimo thunders across the big screen like a herd of wild horses. Jason Patric, Robert Duvall, Gene Hackman, and Wes Studi as Geronimo. Rated PG-13. At theaters now.
Do you have a problem with cat box odor?
No, I don't.
Huh? Well, evidently you need Scoop Fresh scoopable litter from Fresh Step. It freshens even when you're not scooping. Yeah, why just scoop when you can scoop fresh?
Janine woke up in a cold sweat. She remembered getting really smashed the night before. The question is, who was this guy in her bathroom? What had they done? What about AIDS? Then Janine realized that unlike the rest of us, she was just a cartoon. Get high, get stupid, get AIDS.
Brian Dennehy is Dr. Brian McKenzie.
I thought I'd surprise you.
I'm surprised.
He loves women, the track, and breaking rules.
Make a bet.
But most of all, he loves helping people. Birdland, coming Wednesday, January 5th.
There's an old English superstition that says if you place a pair of shoes at your door, one going in, one going out, before you go to bed, you won't have any nightmares. Can't hurt, I guess, but we wondered if anyone knows where nightmares come from and why we have them. So we gave Judd Rose the dream assignment.
Nearly everyone has them. Nightmares, those bad dreams that can shock you awake.
You wake up with a jolt and your heart's pounding and sweating.
They are in my bedroom, and the person is coming up to the bed, and right before they get there, I wake up, usually screaming.
A nightmare is something that you don't want to have.
But the fact is, many of us do.
Nightmares are a universal experience. Pretty much everybody has a nightmare sometime in their childhood or adulthood.
Dr. Neil Cavey is director of the Sleep Disorder Center at New York's Columbia Presbyterian Hospital.
It would not be common for an adult to have more than 1 or 2 nightmares at most in a year.
There are, however, about 12 million Americans who have chronic nightmares. That is, at least one dream a week bad enough to wake you up. We dream during what's called REM sleep, REM meaning rapid eye movement, a phase of sleep that occurs every 90 minutes. In a typical night, the average person dreams for a total of about 2 hours.
Dreams run in the beginning of the night about 5 minutes. Towards the end of the night, they'll be as long as 40 minutes, 50, even 60 minutes in duration.
All dreams, good or bad, are a result of activity in the brainstem. Signals travel up through the midbrain to the brain cortex. That's where we store the raw material of dreams, memories, desires, and fears.
Sometimes I have violent nightmares where someone's attacking me or I'm attacking someone else.
Why do we have these horrible images? For the most part, experts are in the dark. But we do know this much. Our supposedly carefree childhood years are, in fact, a breeding ground for the bad dreams we have as adults.
There are certain terrifying feelings that as children and as adults we experience. Feelings of helplessness, of being sadistically hurt, of being terribly embarrassed, of being caught in terrifying situations. These images are reflected in nightmares.
That's why so many of us have the same nightmare images.
And I'm always falling off heights.
I fall. You can't grab onto anything. You just keep falling and falling. It seems like forever.
I always wake up before I hit bottom. Thank God.
The falling dream symbolizes a feeling of helplessness. Another frequent nightmare, the intruder.
And I know there's an intruder in my own home. In my home, the person is upstairs, right near me, and I see someone moving around down there.
This one means the dreamer is feeling vulnerable in some way. Another bad dream, the test.
I show up in the class and there's an exam. The final exam is usually that day, and I realize I have never gone to a single class. And I know nothing about the material, and it's usually calculus.
The dream of failing in a test will be reflective of anybody who is accomplishment-oriented, wants to be successful, is struggling, and has to deal with some feelings of inadequacy.
Well, now the experts say that one, the test, is especially common among men, who are also more likely to have nightmares involving loss of control, loss of power, or being embarrassed. Women, on the other hand, tend to have bad dreams that center on feelings of helplessness, or being overpowered, or the death of a loved one. Oh, and if you die in your own dream, well, you know what that's supposed to mean.
If you think you're going to die, you know, you always wake up. I mean, haven't you ever heard if you don't wake up, you're going to die?
That, of course, is a myth. The truth is, nightmares are nothing to lose sleep over. They're just nature's way of exposing your inner self. Oh, and speaking of exposing yourself,
sometimes I dream nightmares that I have no clothes on in public. Sometimes, which that's a horrible feeling too, because you feel like everybody's seeing you and not like Madonna.
Don't worry, lady. Madonna is everyone's nightmare.
He speaks for himself, Ed Judd. Now let's go to Ted for a look at tonight's Nightline. Ted Koppel.
Diane, we're going to ask the question, what if we could find out what diseases we were going to get? Is that something we'd really want to know? And would we want our insurance companies to know? What about our bosses? The answers may be beyond our control. Tonight. Diane?
Thank you, Ted. I'm Diane Sawyer in Los Angeles. Good night, and good night, Sam.
Good night, Diane. I'm Sam Donaldson in Washington. Tomorrow in 2020, the back surgery that is ruining lives, an exclusive investigation into a medical catastrophe. Join us again next Thursday evening for another edition of Primetime Live.
Primetime is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
The American Broadcasting Company, ABC.